Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I want to start by asking a serious question. What is the worst thing that could ever happen to you? And I want you to think about it for a moment. Now imagine that that thing actually happened, that your entire world crumbled. What would you do? How would you react? Who would you become? 20 years ago, I was a medical malpractice litigation attorney and the managing partner of my law firm. But who I was and who I was about to become could not possibly have been more different. I'm headed to a meeting on a beautiful winter day, not a care in the world. Then my secretary calls. I cannot understand a word she is saying. I tell her to slow down, take your time. It can't be that bad. When she starts again, her voice is still shaky as she tells me, "Your house is on fire." And I think, that's okay. I can fix that. That's what I do. I arrive to a 3-alarm response. Smoke pouring everywhere. My home is in tatters. The Red Cross is on site because I won't have shelter or food or clothing for the night. And I think, that's okay. I can fix that. As I'm trying to get closer, I hear the fire chief yelling, "What's left of this house needs to come down." That's okay. I can fix that. And then I look over to my open garage bays and I see 9 white sheets. A makeshift morgue on a cold concrete floor. All of my pets are under those sheets. Well, now, I can't fix that. Everyone around me is working frantically and I am standing noise is dim and everything fades to black. The only thing in focus are those sheets. In that moment, my life as I knew it was changed forever. I was about to figure out what I would do. I was about to figure out how I would react, and I was about to figure out who I would become. My whole world had been thrown off its axis, and I didn't need to just write it. I needed to rewrite it. I needed to redefine it. Because our lives are not defined by what happens to us, but by how we handle what we are handed. So was I given a fate, or was I given an opportunity to make a difference, to change my purpose, to enhance my value? The true test of a human being is to find out what you're worth, what your real value is, what you can accomplish, and what the true meaning of life is. So I started a little organization called West Place Animal Sanctuary to help farm animals rescued from neglect, abuse, and cruelty cases. In all honesty, I didn't think it would become anything or go anywhere. I didn't know if people even cared about something like that. A few years in, West Place was growing so much, and I was working 80, 90, sometimes 100 hours a week between managing my law firm and cultivating this new organization. And I came home from work one night, and my husband sat me down and said, "I don't think you know how big West Place is getting. You can't do this anymore. You have to pick one." And I think he was hoping I'd pick the job where I had the big paycheck, the 401k, stock options, 3 weeks vacation, health insurance, and all other kinds of benefits. But once those words came out of his mouth, it was too late to take them back. Even if he wished he could. I think he thinks it was the dumbest thing he had ever said. And I'm sure he's questioned it 1,000 times since then. And honestly, so have I. Because to become a lawyer, you go to law school, and then you start at a firm as an associate, and a partner will give you guidance. But to start a nonprofit that specifically focuses in farm animals, from neglect, abuse, and cruelty cases, there's no school for that. There's no textbook. There's no training manual. There is no guidance. Frankly, even other nonprofits, to reach out to them, they don't want to give you fundraising ideas or grant suggestions or give you any of their contacts, and I don't blame them. Honestly, the practice of animal welfare is more cutthroat than the practice of law for me ever was. And to make things harder, back then, there was no social media, there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, there was no TikTok, there was no Twitter, there was no anything. And getting your information out to the world, it was not as easy as just hitting a button, clicking, and you reach everyone across the universe in 1 millisecond. You also couldn't build your own website. You had to go to an IT person. So things were a lot more difficult back in the day. More importantly, for my nonprofit, there was no startup money. There was no bequest left behind. There was no endowment. And I had no one backing me. So, of course, I opened a bank account with my own money, and then I built a barn, and then I got enough to feed the animals, handle their medical, buy all of the supplies that they needed. And since I had practiced law and I had done reasonably well for myself, it wasn't a big deal. But whenever someone asks me, how do I start my nonprofit, and they want to have a nonprofit just like mine, the first things I ask them are, what do you currently do for a living? Have you created a business plan? And how much money have you put aside for startup costs? The responding facial expressions on everyone's faces tell me that between the shock and confusion, they haven't really given any thought to that beyond, I'd really just like to start a nonprofit, or I'd really just like to start my own business. There is no secret money tree that grows in my backyard, and there are no magic elves that come out at night to make everything look good and make sure everything's running smoothly. No, when you start a business, all of that falls to you. When I was practicing law, especially as a boss, everything ran downhill. I could give out assignments, and I could make sure that everyone was doing what they were doing and meeting their responsibilities. But when you are the staff, and when you start a business and you're the only staff, all of that responsibility rolls uphill. It rolls up to you. When you're the only staff, every minute of every day is you. If I was going to succeed, I knew that I could not give up. Every job below me became my job. Every task was my task. And I had to be willing to do what needed to be done and get the job done if I wanted the business to succeed. I had to do it no matter what the day, the time, the weather, how sick you feel, how tired you are. But I wanted to do it, so I didn't give up. Though there were a lot of other things that I did give up. I gave up date nights with my husband. I gave up getting out of work at 5 o'clock at night. I gave up weekends, vacations, holidays. There are so many things that if you really want to commit to starting your own business, you do have to sacrifice. But I had to remind myself that I was the only one that could keep me going and keep the business going. I was the only one that could keep myself motivated. I was my biggest supporter, and I had to rely on me. You hear people talk about a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, but it's not often that you hear someone ever talk about having their entire life plan already figured out. And that's not a bad thing, because planning your life so specifically and sticking to that plan can sometimes mean that you miss out on an opportunity that you never even thought you would have had. Of course, there is some planning that needs to go into it. There's no secret formula, there's no magic, as I mentioned. It all really just starts with the basic premise of hard work and minding your budget. And that sounds easy to say, it sounds easy to do, so let's get personal for a minute. I didn't come from money. Actually, it was quite the opposite. My mom was a single mom of two, and she was eligible for food stamps, and she was eligible for WIC, but she was too proud to accept any of that, and instead she worked 2 full-time jobs just to have the 3 of us get by. My clothes were hand-me-down, or she sewed them herself, and she would take my sister and I out for fast food, to McDonald's at the time for a Happy Meal, but she could only afford 1. So she would sit and watch my sister and I split it so that we would be able to eat. But I learned 2 great lessons from growing up like that. The first thing I learned is that I didn't want to live like that. I knew there had to be better. I didn't know what better was because I had never been exposed to it, but something deep down just told me that there was better out there and I needed to figure out how to find it and how to get it. The second thing I learned was rising to the challenge, the value of hard work, tenacity, and never giving up. Growing up the way I did certainly came with challenges. My mom was a waitress for her first job and a cashier at a grocery store for her second job. And I was in all advanced placement classes in something called special perceptions in education. So my mom couldn't help me with my homework or my school projects or studying or book reports. So I had to study a little harder and I had to dig a little deeper. And back then, there was no Google for studying. There was no app that could write your term papers for you. No, it was Encyclopedia Britannica and going to the local library after you figured out the Dewey Decimal System. When I got into high school, I ended up participating in a musical, singing, acting, dancing, and my mom thought I would head to Hollywood. That was her get-rich-quick scheme for me. Look at me. I'm barely 5 foot tall. I've got brown hair, brown eyes, I have no distinguishing features. There's literally nothing special. So she was still convinced that that was what I was going to do. But there's a saying, you cannot fight City Hall. And I can't fight the fact that I can't reach any of the top shelves of my kitchen cabinets. And if I want something, I jump up on the counter and I climb like a spider monkey to get it. So Hollywood was not opening its doors to welcome me. So I needed to rely on my best asset, and that was my mind. I figured that would take me further than anything else, and it would lead me in the direction that I was supposed to go. And it did. I got accepted at Rutgers, and I graduated with honors, and then I got accepted to law school, and it just kept going. The thing is that growing up had been such a challenge for me that I ended up welcoming the challenges. So when my house fire happened, and I lost everything, and everything changed, once the smoke cleared, and I mean that both literally and figuratively, I thought I'd easily succeed in the challenge of changing my course and doing something totally different with my life. And then the challenges start coming. And you need to know that once the challenges start coming, they really don't ever stop. In a world where so many people are getting canceled for saying or doing the wrong thing, social media was a challenge of ours, especially when you're saving animals. We've been told we're not political enough. We've been told that we're not vegan enough. But promoting our mission and sharing our brand and our vision and controlling our message in a world that is finicky and sometimes overly sensitized. It was not easy. We wanted to make sure that to protect our brand, and yes, we're a nonprofit, but we're also a business. So protecting our brand is just as important as it is to another business. And that takes vigilance and figuring out how to build trust. And I just came across this last night, and in developing trust, you want to make sure that you meet the 4 C's. And the 4 C's are, and I'm going to look at my notes because I don't want to get it wrong. The 4 C's are competence. So you have to be competent in the business which you decide to take on. You need to care. Now, in my world, caring is easy. I wouldn't have started an animal nonprofit if I didn't care. But if you sell a product, you need to care. If you offer a service, you need to care. And the public needs to know that. You also need to have a commitment. A commitment is so important because sometimes it will rise above everything else. You might have to miss dinner with your spouse, or a vacation, or a holiday, because you need to be committed to the business, which means being committed to the public, so that they can gain your trust and you can earn it from them. And finally, you have to have consistency. So consistency in your message. You, again, want to know what your brand is, and you want to protect it, and it's that important. So if you get all of those things and you practice at developing trust, you become trustworthy. And in this world, it's a little bit easier to be looked at as an authority in your field, or as someone who has a good service to offer, or a good product to sell. And that's not the only challenge. Our mission is also a challenge. And let's face it, not everyone cares about farm animals. Not everyone cares about animals, but farm animals is such a subset of the animal population, and it doesn't resonate with everyone. When I started the sanctuary, I always said that I was starting a sanctuary for animals, not for humans. And I stuck with that for so long. But then I quickly realized in order to stay relevant, you have to touch humans. You have to connect. You need people, and you need to affect those people. So we tried to rise above that challenge by starting an educational program for student interns. And we take in high school and college students, and we provide them with hands-on skills and hands-on training that they wouldn't otherwise get in the classroom. We give them skills if they want to go and work at a vet's office, or become a veterinarian, or a wildlife rehabilitator, or if they want to work at a zoo, or even become a biologist. And we offer that outside of the classroom, hands-on experience. And we've also established relationships with numerous schools where their students can get those community service hours, or they can get their senior credits that they need to graduate. So just like every business, we've found ways to manage and meet the challenges of getting and keeping the public's interest. In more than a decade and a half, West Place is going strong. But this isn't a presentation just about success. This is also a presentation about failure. Because you cannot have success unless you have had failure. And I believe being honest about it is one of the greatest lessons that you can teach yourself. I know I've failed. I have failed so many times that I have stopped counting. And I still fail. Can anyone else out there admit that they have failed at something, at anything? And that is so important. One of the questions that was posed for me today was, how do you balance owning a business and also knowing when to disconnect? And I almost laughed. so bad at that. I am probably not the person who should be up here giving advice on that. It's like a job interview when the potential employer asks you, what is your greatest weakness? And you answer, working too hard is my greatest weakness. But it's a real thing. It really is. And honestly, I'm still trying to figure out how to disconnect and how to find that work-life balance. And honestly, these 5 ladies that are going to be at the panel in a little while, I'm looking forward to staying and hearing them because I'm hoping that they have mastered how to have a marriage, a family, a career, how to build a legacy, and still balance out their life at the exact same time and be successful at all of it. Because I'll be honest, I haven't. If my business sold a product, I think the answer would be different. Supply and demand, marketing, maintaining inventory, shipping dates. For the most part, I would be able to remind myself that the work would still be there tomorrow. So I could go out on that date night and have dinner with my spouse. Or I would be able to remind myself that the work would still be there on Monday so that I can enjoy a weekend with my family. And the work's not going anywhere the day after a holiday so that I could be in the moment and have that holiday as well. But if you're getting into a business where it is a life and death business, those guidelines go out the window. An animal rescue, doing an animal rescue, can actually often mean the difference between an animal living and an animal dying. Plus, animals can't tell time, and they don't know what day of the week it is. They don't know if it's a Saturday. They don't know if it's a weekend. They need care 365 days a year, no matter what. So I am still a work in progress. I still have a lot to learn in the work-life balance. I am certainly not perfect, but I hope by the end of this, we can all realize that you don't have to be perfect in order to make a difference. In spite of being imperfect, there is a lot that I've learned in business. I've learned that it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to have fear. And I don't even mean in the sense of the big picture, in a life-changing, life-altering fear. I just mean in the day-to-day. Here I am, giving a keynote presentation on the outside, and on the inside, I just feel like I'm still this little girl walking around aimlessly, not knowing what I'm doing from one minute to the next, and hoping that no one figures me out. It's okay to be afraid as long as you don't let the fear stop you. You cannot let the fear prevent you from taking action. Because taking action is so important. One day at the sanctuary, a volunteer left the feed room door open in our barn, and they left a bread bag on the floor. There was no bread in it, it was just a plastic bag. But old horses love the smell of bread. And our horse Johnny was no different, and he could sniff it out from a mile away. So 1 second later, he's choking on it, and someone starts screaming for me to rush on over. I have no idea what is happening. All I know is his eyes are bulging out, he's having trouble breathing, and everyone around me is upset and they're panicking. So of course, I want to panic. I want to panic. I want to break down. It's one of those moments where it's so overwhelming that you actually can't see how you're going to get to the other side of it without someone coming in to help you or rescue you or do it for you and save the day. And in that second, I knew there was no one else that was going to do it for me. There was no one else that was going to save the day. So I asked the volunteers, did anyone feed him anything? Nope. Did he get into anything? Nope. Do you know what happened to him? Nope. I go back to, did he get into anything? No. Oh, wait. Yeah, there's a plastic bag that's missing from the ground. So I think, great. Now I know what he's choking on. Now I know that there's not enough time to call the vet. Before I know it, I'm running into the barn, I'm grabbing a shovel, and I'm shoving it in his mouth like an oral speculum, so that I can take my arm and shove it down his throat and try to find the plastic bag. So I pull it out, and by now, one volunteer is crying, another one is screaming, and another one is just standing there frozen in fear, not even blinking. And by the time I even appreciate what I had done, Johnny's already back grazing grass. And of course, if his story didn't turn out that way, it would be an example of one of my failures, not an example of a challenge. So had I not taken action, that would have been a failure. Inaction is failure, but taking action means taking control. And taking control is very, very empowering. You have to have faith in yourself. And in that moment, whether I knew it or not, I instinctively had faith to overcome so many obstacles. And you are going to have to surmount obstacles in your business. And the business in which I chose to be in, sometimes those obstacles are, again, life and death. If I can tell you a little story about obstacles, it's also a story about a sheep. Her name is Shaw. And if you'll bear with me, I want to give you a little bit of background, a little bit of backstory so you can truly appreciate the obstacle. So in 2016, over in Westport, Massachusetts, there was the biggest case of animal cruelty that had ever been seen in the history of the Northeast. There were 1,400 farm animals found in a state of death or dying. The Westport Animal Control officers went to the scene and they realized they couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't handle it. So they called in some local rescues like the Boston Animal Rescue League or the MSPCA. And when they showed up, they thought, oh, this is too big. We can't handle it. So they call in the National ASPCA. And the National ASPCA comes to the scene, and they can handle it, but not alone. They need other organizations. So they call around and they find organizations like mine. So I get involved with them, and we spend 5 months pulling the 1,100 surviving animals out of this place that they literally refer to as the hellhole. And we moved them to a temporary location, and we brought them back to a state of health where we could get them all adopted out and move on to see their forever homes. And as I'm wrapping up, the ASPCA comes to me and says, well, how many of these 1,100 rescues is your organization going to take in? I thought, well, I just gave 5 months of my time. I thought that was good, but okay, we'll take in some rescues. So I'm working in the sheep pen, and I knew these 2 babies, these 2 lambs were born, and they had never left their mom the entire time. And on one of the very last days, this little boy lamb comes over and sniffs me out, and I turn around, and we weren't supposed to take photos. Everything was going to trial, there was going to be an investigation. I snap a little photo, and he follows me around for a little bit. So I named him Colby, and then his sister comes out, and I named her Shaw. So I bring them home, along with 65 other rescues that I decided to take. Finding housing for all of them was an obstacle, but it's not the obstacle that this story is about. So fast forward a few years, and the East Providence, Rhode Island police call me, and they had gone out on a domestic abuse call. And while they were there, they could hear something crying. So fortunately, the 2 officers are animal lovers, and they go next door, and they see this little 20-day-old lamb, and it's freezing cold, it's winter, He's standing in a pen about this big. He has no food, he has no water, he has no shelter, and most importantly, he has no mom. So they pull him, and the next thing I get is a video clip, and he's sitting on the dispatcher's desk, eating a little piece of hay with a little blanket over him, and the dispatcher had named him Barnaby. So Barnaby, cute, right? So Barnaby also comes and lives with us. And sorry to the men in the audience, but all of our males get castrated or neutered or gelded. And we need to do that just to make sure that we have the ability to rescue. We're not a farm, we're not a breeder, we're an animal rescuer. So Barnaby gets scheduled to get castrated. And he's only a couple of months old, and the vet has to postpone. That has an emergency and has to postpone. Okay, no big deal. The following week, Barnaby gets castrated, and we think nothing of it. And a little bit of time goes by, and Shaw starts to look a little chunky. But you never want to tell a woman that she looks a little chunky, so I still don't think anything of it. And as it continues, I call the vet in, just, is she dying? What's happening? So I ask, is it possible that she could have gotten some fun with Barnaby? And he says, well, yeah, I mean, anything's possible. And I said, but he was only a couple of months old. And he said, oh yeah, that can totally happen. Thank you for telling me that earlier. So he also tells me, just to make matters more fun, that if she is pregnant, which he couldn't tell, by the way, he couldn't hear anything, he couldn't see anything, but if she is pregnant and she does give birth, chances are it's going to happen in the winter. Everything happens in the winter. And she's probably going to do it out in the field by herself, and everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. So here I am with a maybe pregnant sheep, and I'm not a farmer. So I do my research, and I learn as much as I can, and I look back at a calendar to try to see, okay, if I can figure out when that fun might have happened, maybe I can at least predict when she might give birth. So, again, all of this was challenging, none of this was an obstacle. So she starts to show signs of being pregnant, and she starts to show signs of her getting ready to give birth. And the whole time, I'm still in denial. I'm still not willing to admit that this is going to happen because I don't know how to handle this. So, of course, one January day, right before dark, like I said, in the animal world, everything always happens in the winter, it always happens right before dark, or it always happens on a holiday. So I see Shaw standing out in the pasture, and right next to her is this little baby lamb. And I named him Zane. So I go down and I pick up Zane, I bundle him up, and she follows me, and I bring them into a stall and give her some food and water, let them get warm. And Shaw does exactly what a mama sheep is supposed to do. She starts cleaning her baby, and it's good for her, and it's good for the baby. And I'm sitting there, and I'm so happy. And even my husband comes in, and I start talking to him about what a great experience that was to, have my sheep get through this pregnancy and have this wonderful little lamb. And as I'm sitting there for about 2 hours, I look over, and her tail moves, and there's a nose and a hoof. And I think, oh my God. And then I think, now I have an obstacle. I have an obstacle for so many reasons. Number one, I'm not a farmer. Number two, they usually have one lamb. If they have 2 lambs, it happens within 45 minutes of the first lamb. We've been sitting here for hours. So all of a sudden, I'm staring at a dead baby lamb in her birth canal. And this could also fall under fear and panic because those are exactly what I felt. It certainly didn't fall under a challenge because it was so insurmountable And I didn't want to accept the challenge. I didn't know how I was going to get from where we were to the other side of things, and I didn't want to. So I tell my husband, I need you to hold her. Because I'm thinking, how am I going to learn how to be a midwife in 2 seconds? How do I help birth this lamb? Is Shaw going to die? And if she does, how do I take care of her first lamb, Zane? I had researched the science of pregnancy. I didn't research this moment at all. And I was completely unprepared. I had no idea what to do or how it was going to turn out. So my husband, Tom, is holding Shaw, and I say, you hold her front end, I gotta check out her back end. So there was definitely a nose and a hoof. There was only one hoof. And the one thing I did notice was supposed to be two. And I went blank, I couldn't think of anything. I probably couldn't have told you what my name was at that moment in time. And I tell my husband, hold her tight, I'm going in. Because you have to take action, even if it's going to be a colossal failure. So I go in and I try to reach the leg so I can get the other hoof pointed out. I can feel it, but I can't move it. And I wouldn't have been able to move it without pushing the baby all the way back in the birth canal, and he'd already been there for hours, and I couldn't stop the clock from ticking. So I said, I can't change the position. And I asked my husband, how is Shaw doing? And he says to me, she's not going to be able to handle this any longer. Hurry up with whatever you're doing and just do it. And I say, but I don't know what I'm doing. But I knew I had to do something, so I decide to go in with the other hand and the other arm, and I decide I'm just pulling out this lamb because I've got to save Shaw's life. And the minute I get both my hands in there, I realize I have my rings on.
Oh.
Here I am trying to save her life, and I am going to slice her insides open, and I'm going to lose everybody. So I'm in there with my thumb, trying to turn my rings around so that they don't hurt, and I'm freaking out, and Tom tells me, there's no time, just pull already. So I do. I pull out the lamp, and it went from chaos of Shaw batting and my husband yelling at me to pull and me freaking out to dead silence. There was absolutely nothing but silence. And then I realized, silence is actually worse. Having nothing is actually worse. And I'm just sitting there on the floor, holding a dead baby lamb that's covered in blood. And then he takes a breath. And I realized I conquered my obstacle. And I named him Xander. So Xander was paralyzed for a few days because he had been in the birth canal for so long. And he wasn't able to stand and get milk from his mom. So every day, Shaw would nurse Zane, her firstborn, and I would bottle feed Xander, her secondborn. And while we were doing that, it gave me the time to actually reflect on what I had accomplished. Because running your own business sometimes is challenges, sometimes it's failure, it brings fear, and it brings obstacles. But at the same time, sometimes it's also basking in the glow of a hard-fought accomplishment. And in that moment, it makes it all worth it, and you want to get up and you want to do it again the next day. So for me, it took the life-altering tragedy of having my house fire to change my course. But we're all here on our own journey. It certainly doesn't take a house fire for someone to change their course. You do what you want to do. And do it for the reasons that you want to do it. And most importantly, do it your way. Don't compare yourself to others. Do what's right for you. Do it well. Embrace it and own it. What happened to me with my house fire? Certainly was not my life's plan. I'm still not sure if I reset my course or if my course was reset for me. All I do know is that changing the lives of animals has forever changed my life. Having become a lawyer and defending clients was a really good goal, but becoming the defender of others that can't speak for themselves, for me, was the right goal. So when you discover your cause, embrace it. When you embrace it, you can turn your cause into action. And when you turn your cause into action, and you use those actions to make a difference, you'll make a difference to so many people around you. You will enhance your value. My value used to come from breaking someone down at a deposition. And now my value comes from rescuing farm animals and giving them a second chance at life. We're all here on this incredible planet. We're here together, and doing something that gives back to it has done more for me than I ever could have imagined. It doesn't matter what stage of life you're in, if you are a young woman who's just getting started on your career, or if you were someone who's a little more seasoned and you're in the middle of a career, but maybe you're looking for the right time, or you're looking for the right sign to make a change, to make a career change, or even to make a life change. Just know that whether you do it for yourself, or if you do it for loved ones and those around you, or you do it for perfect strangers, like I did, just know that you can do it. Because we get one life, and it's up to each one of us to make sure that what we do with it is enough. And if you're just going through the motions, and you're just checking the boxes, or you're just punching a clock, that might not be enough. That might not be sustainable for you in the long run. You need to be sustainable. You need to make what you do count. You need to accept the challenge. You need to face the fear. You need to embrace the failure. And you need to surmount those obstacles. And when you can do that, you will leave your impact. And when you leave your impact, you will enhance your life's value. And all you really need to do to enhance your value is to start with some inspiration. And sometimes it's just a really good story. Find a story that inspires you. Then go out and create your own story and make sure that you are creating a really good story to tell. This is your life. This is your value. This is your impact. Just as with my story, I can't promise you that it's always going to be easy, but I can definitely promise you that it's going to be worth it. I thank you for listening, and if anyone wants to meet Shaw and Zane and Xander, I encourage you to come to West Place Animal Sanctuary. We have a visitor weekend on Thanksgiving weekend, and you'll be able to say hi to them and meet those little superstars in person. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, where are you located and what are the hours going to be on Thanksgiving Day weekend?
Oh, that's an easy question. I'm going to put my glasses on because I haven't been able to see any of you, which made it easier on me. So we're open on Thanksgiving weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I believe our first tours start at 9:30. My development director is leaving, and the last one goes off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we run tours every half an hour. They're hour-and-a-half long educational tours. You'll learn about the history of the sanctuary. You'll learn about our environmental practices, our sustainability. You will, of course, have meet and greets with all of the animals. We have a lot of our animals that run loose. We have 4 pigs, and they'll probably follow you on the tour. So it's a really great opportunity, not just for kids, but there are a lot of people that come without their kids, and it's like adult Disney World. So you don't have to have an excuse to want to come and enjoy that. Thank you.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
How many animals do you have? And what types of animals are
The numbers is hard. Somewhere between 75 and 100. It changes every day. Yesterday we got a new duck in. As soon as I get done here, someone is waiting for me on a mini pygmy goat rescue. So the numbers change on a daily basis. But we have, let's see if I can get these all right. We have alpaca, sheep, horses, goats, pigs, donkeys, cows. We have peacocks, pheasant. We have turtles, we have fish, we have ducks, we have geese, we have a wild starling. I'm sure I'm missing several, but yeah, big variety. Farm animal world is unique. It's whatever is not domestic that couldn't go to a dog and cat shelter is coming to us. Thanks.
Do you have a website anywhere where we can offer donations?
Yes and yes. Thank you. Best question. Thank you for asking. We do have a website. It's on all of our information outside, but our organization is called West Place, and it's westplace.org. And through there, you can absolutely donate. And not only that, but we would love for all of you to spread the word. So even if you can't financially contribute to help out our nonprofit, just word of mouth helps us grow and helps us attract more people and gets more people to know us. So thank you. All right, well, I thank you all very much, and I love you too. I'm going to stick around for the panel because I can't wait to hear it. And I'll see everyone else outside afterwards. Thank you so much.